British period dramas are supposed to be safe, lace, teacups, and polite gossip by candlelight. But sometimes they light a firestorm instead. From accusations of rewriting history to furious viewers saying the costumes were the only accurate thing on screen, these shows stirred outrage that spilled far beyond the set. Why do stories set hundreds of years ago still spark such modern fury? Stick around, because the answers might be sharper than you think. Bridgerton 2020-. When Netflix launched Bridgerton, it wasn't just the violins playing pop covers that caught attention, it was the casting. The show used what it called color-conscious casting, putting actors of color into Regency England's highest ranks. Some viewers praised it as refreshing, while others claimed it rewrote history into fantasy. And that tension turned Bridgerton into more than a frothy period romance. It became a cultural battlefield. The uproar wasn't just online chatter. Think pieces filled newspapers, historians weighed in, and debates erupted over whether period dramas should aim for historical accuracy or reflect modern values. The show's creator, Chris Van Dusen, argued that Bridgerton wasn't meant to be a documentary. It was about reimagining the past with today's lens. For many fans, that freedom made the series exhilarating, not restricted by old boundaries. But Backlash had its own effect. Some critics dismissed the series as historical fan fiction, while others said it finally broke the stale mold of traditional British dramas. Either way, Bridgerton was impossible to ignore. It turned Sunday night costume drama into something edgy, addictive, and globally explosive. Love it or hate it, the Backlash is part of why it became a phenomenon. The Crown 2016 to present. Every period drama bends truth a little, but The Crown pushed that idea to the limit. Covering Queen Elizabeth II's reign, the show sparked outrage almost every season. Politicians and royal historians accused it of smearing reputations by blending fact with drama. For instance, its portrayal of Prince Charles and Princess Diana's troubled marriage was so intense that officials publicly urged Netflix to add disclaimers. The fury wasn't confined to tabloids. Even major newspapers ran columns demanding the show clarify its liberties. The debate wasn't whether The Crown was good television, it was whether it was dangerous. Could a beautifully shot drama actually reshape how people remember the monarchy? That question turned into a national argument. Ironically, the Backlash fueled interest. Each new controversy drew fresh viewers, curious to see what the fuss was about. Some saw The Crown as daring art, others called it irresponsible fiction. But one thing was clear. It blurred the line between entertainment and history so well that people couldn't stop fighting about it. And that fight kept the show at the center of global attention. Taboo 2017. Tom Hardy in a top hat, growling his way through a grimy vision of 19th century London, should have been a surefire hit. But Taboo wasn't your average BBC drama. It was violent, muddy, and obsessed with the city's underbelly. Some viewers loved its raw energy, others recoiled, calling it gratuitous misery. The Backlash came fast. Critics slammed it as incoherent, indulgent, and historically questionable. The show leaned into darkness. Instead of elegant ballrooms, it gave you back alley deals, grim ships, and Hardy chewing through every scene with barely contained menace. Yet the messiness that drew fans also repelled plenty of others. Complaints piled up that it tried too hard to be edgy, sacrificing clarity for grit. What made Taboo fascinating was how divisive it was. It didn't slip quietly into the background of BBC dramas. It stormed in, split audiences down the middle, and refused to apologize. And when a drama makes people this angry, it usually means it touched a nerve. Whether you saw it as genius or nonsense, Taboo proved period dramas could still cause shockwaves. Victoria, 2016 to 2019. On paper, Victoria should have been safe. Jenna Coleman, as a young queen finding her footing, lush gowns, political intrigue, and a royal romance. But what viewers got instead was a show critics said leaned dangerously close to soap opera. Some praised it as entertaining, while others accused it of trivializing history. The Backlash centered on its melodramatic tone, with historians rolling their eyes at plotlines they called exaggerated or invented. The show sparked bigger questions. Should period dramas aim for educational value or simply entertainment? Victoria's creators leaned firmly into spectacle, crafting cliffhangers that wouldn't feel out of place in a modern primetime drama. That choice divided audiences right down the middle. And yet, Backlash didn't sink the series. It fueled it. Fans defended its romantic energy, while critics continued to groan at its liberties. In the end, Victoria found itself in a strange position, a series celebrated for its grandeur, but remembered just as much for the storm it caused among purists, which, in the world of period dramas, is almost as regal as the crown itself. Downton Abbey, 2010 to 2015. Downton Abbey was supposed to be a love letter to tradition, grand estates, strict hierarchies, and tea served precisely at 4. Instead, it became a lightning rod. While audiences around the world adored its glossy portrayal of aristocratic life, critics in Britain tore into it. The biggest complaint? It was accused of polishing history so clean that it erased the grit. Class tension, one of the most defining features of early 20th century England, was there, but softened. Servants cracked witty one-liners and formed warm bonds with their masters, while harsher realities of exploitation were dialed down to background noise. Historians groaned that the series gave viewers a romanticized fairy tale rather than an honest depiction of the dying Edwardian order. Some even said it was propaganda for nostalgia, presenting the elite as benevolent caretakers instead of deeply entrenched in inequality. The backlash didn't stop there. International viewers accused the show of glossing over Britain's imperial entanglements, painting a fantasy world where politics and empire barely touched the manor walls. But here's the twist. Every complaint made the show even more of a phenomenon. It became water-cooler TV precisely because people wanted to debate it. Was it comforting escapism or a dangerous distortion of history? Downton Abbey walked that fine line and came out a global smash hit. It won Emmys, spawned films, and became a brand all on its own. But behind every elegant dinner scene lingered the shadow of that backlash, proof that sometimes controversy is the best marketing of all. Anne Boleyn, 2021. When Channel 5 announced Jodie Turner-Smith as Anne Boleyn, the reaction was immediate and explosive. For some, it was groundbreaking representation, casting a black actress in one of English history's most mythologized roles. For others, it was an unforgivable rewrite of history. The backlash went beyond the usual grumbling. It turned into national headlines, opinion pieces, and furious arguments about race, history, and art. The series itself wasn't a straightforward retelling. It leaned into psychological thriller territory, focusing on Anne's final months before her execution. Turner-Smith's performance was widely praised for its intensity, but debates over casting overshadowed the show's content. Social media filled with criticism about historical inaccuracy, while defenders argued that period drama has always taken liberties with truth. After all, no one complained when Henry VIII was played, as slimmer, more handsome, or far less tyrannical than he really was. The backlash wasn't just about one show. It exposed how fiercely audiences cling to authenticity in period dramas, even though authenticity is often a flexible illusion. The irony? The controversy gave the series a bigger platform than it ever would have had otherwise. People tuned in just to see what the fuss was about. Anne Boleyn may not have been universally loved, but it proved one thing. A period drama can still provoke the kind of fiery debate usually reserved for politics. Jamestown, 2017 to 2019. When Sky One launched Jamestown, they promised a gritty look at the birth of England's first permanent colony in America. What viewers got was closer to a melodramatic soap opera. The backlash was swift. Critics slammed it for reducing a complex, brutal period of history into steamy plot lines filled with love triangles, betrayals, and simplified conflicts. But the loudest outrage came from what wasn't shown. The show almost entirely erased the indigenous perspective, sidelining the Powhatan people, whose lives were upended by colonization. Historians and cultural critics tore into the series for presenting a sanitized version of early America that focused only on the settlers' dramas. For a show about colonization, the silence on native voices was deafening, and it wasn't just academics. Many viewers found themselves uncomfortable with how the series framed Jamestown as a backdrop for personal squabbles, rather than confronting the violence and exploitation that defined the colony. That tension between glossy period spectacle and historical truth became the show's defining feature. Despite the backlash, Jamestown ran for 3 seasons. It carved out a loyal fan base who enjoyed the soapy thrills, but it never shook off the cloud of criticism. In the end, it stood as proof that you can't cherry-pick history without facing the consequences. The Spanish Princess, 2019 to 2020. Starz's The Spanish Princess set out to tell the story of Catherine of Aragon, Henry VIII's first wife. On the surface, it was a bold choice, giving a central role to a woman often treated as a historical footnote. But what followed was a storm of backlash from historians and critics who accused the series of rewriting Tudor history into wish fulfillment. One of the biggest points of contention was its portrayal of Catherine herself. The series presented her as a fiery warrior princess, even giving her a battlefield sequence that never happened. Historians called this fan fiction history, an attempt to modernize Catherine into a figure she simply wasn't. Add to that a host of inaccuracies around Henry VIII, court politics, and even basic chronology, and the complaints piled high. Yet the backlash didn't mean people weren't watching. On the contrary, curiosity skyrocketed. Viewers tuned in to see just how far the show would bend history. For some, it was entertaining, escapism. For others, it was a frustrating distortion of one of England's most famous dynasties. The Spanish Princess ultimately ran for 2 seasons before being wrapped up, but it left a legacy of heated debate. Should period dramas stick to the record, or should they reshape the past into a story modern audiences want to see? That question defined its run and kept the arguments alive long after the credits rolled. The White Princess, 2017. On the surface, The White Princess had everything: lavish costumes, royal intrigue, and the kind of sweeping romance that makes Tudor fans swoon. But what came with it was one of the loudest historical backlash storms of its time. Based on Philippa Gregory's novel, the series dramatized Elizabeth of York's marriage to Henry VII, yet critics argued it bent history so far it was almost unrecognizable. One of the biggest flashpoints was its portrayal of women's agency. Gregory's novels are famous for putting women at the center, giving them sharper voices and bolder choices than the record shows. Admirers loved this reinterpretation. Historians, not so much. They blasted the series for warping key figures into characters better suited for primetime melodrama. The blending of fact and fiction created a clash between those who wanted history as it was and those who wanted history as they wished it had been. The show didn't help itself by leaning into heightened drama, secret plots, scheming queens, and confrontations that felt more like stage plays than sober history. To some, that was thrilling. To others, it was insulting. The backlash reached a fever pitch with debates about whether this history light did a disservice to audiences who might take it as fact. But here's the catch. That very criticism drove attention. People tuned in, not for accuracy, but to see what outrageous twist would come next. The White Princess walked away with viewers hooked and historians fuming, proving that rewriting history can be risky, but undeniably entertaining. Wolf Hall, 2015. If the Tudors was slammed for being too flashy, Wolf Hall caught the opposite complaint: it was too slow. Based on Hilary Mantel's award-winning novels, this BBC drama starred Mark Rylance as Thomas Cromwell and took a stark, realistic approach to Henry VIII's court. Critics adored it, but many viewers rebelled. The backlash came down to pacing and tone. Instead of sweeping romance or heated confrontations, Wolf Hall gave audiences long silences, candlelit rooms, and subtle glances. For some, it was masterful minimalism. For others, it was like watching paint dry in dim lighting. Social media lit up with complaints that it was boring, too dark, or confusing. Historians, meanwhile, praised its authenticity. Costumes were made using period stitching, sets were historically accurate, and dialogue captured the restrained atmosphere of Tudor politics. Yet those very details that made scholars cheer were what made casual viewers drift. Wolf Hall showed how dangerous authenticity can be. Critics hailed it as art, but mainstream audiences weren't convinced. Its backlash revealed a painful truth: accuracy doesn't always equal entertainment. And in the crowded world of period dramas, sometimes the candle burns too slowly to keep everyone watching. The Serpent Queen 2022 to present. When Stars introduced The Serpent Queen, starring Samantha Morton as Catherine de' Medici, they didn't hold back. The show was a dark, witty take on one of history's most infamous queens. Catherine narrates directly to the camera, dripping venom and sarcasm, almost daring you to like her. Unsurprisingly, it caused a storm. Viewers split instantly. Some loved the bold style, calling it refreshing and fun. Others said it turned history into parody. Critics accused it of making Catherine a caricature, more villainous than historical accounts supported. The direct-to-camera asides sparked heated debate. Was this clever storytelling or cheap modern gimmickry? And then there was the tone. With sharp humor mixed into cruelty, it walked the line between drama and satire. Traditional period drama fans weren't sure what to make of it. Many called it disrespectful to history, while others thought it was exactly what the genre needed, a ruthless queen who didn't apologize for her ambition. The Serpent Queen may still be running, but its legacy is already sealed. It proved that period dramas don't need to play by the rules to spark outrage. Sometimes the backlash is the point. So, what do 15 costume dramas and centuries of history teach us? That lace collars and candlelit halls can still cause cultural earthquakes. Whether it was Bridgerton reimagining society, The Crown blurring fact and fiction, or Wolf Hall daring to be too real, each of these shows sparked debates far bigger than their scripts. Which one shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts, hit subscribe, and let's keep unraveling the stories that history still can't settle.